Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the warm introduction. It's my pleasure to talk you through this session. I'm well aware that we've got half an hour, and it's quite a big topic. It's something we could pretty much spend the whole day talking about. So I'm really going to try and get into the nub of it pretty quickly, so I do hope you enjoy the session. Right. So, per the introduction, my role sits in the employee relations space. I look after global employee relations, so I think I'm well versed to be able to take you through the topic. And I think what we've been hearing over the course of the day is around AI. We're hearing about it from a training and a learning and development perspective. You're going to hear about it from a performance management perspective. You're going to hear about it from a recruitment perspective. But one of the aspects that's very rarely touched upon is actually employee relations. And it's a pity that that's so, because you could have the best AI infrastructure covering all of these respective elements, but then the key thing that's going to unravel the impact that you prospectively could make could indeed be employee relations, right? So your recruitment could be absolutely 5-star, all of the other facets 5-star, but because your employee relations practices have your employees feeling like you are not behaving fairly as an employer, you are not behaving equitably, it starts to erode your workplace culture. So let's talk about a quick overview. So employee relations is not sitting in a unique space in terms of being impacted by AI. ER has definitely been impacted by AI, and it's around a lot of the key elements that we've been hearing. It's around the efficiencies, right? It's around employee engagement, and importantly, from an ER perspective, it's around mitigating risk. So how? You've heard most of this before, the automation of tasks, right? Going through an Excel spreadsheet to understand who's gotten a written warning or final written warning over the past 5 years, what it was for, who issued it, etc., is a time-consuming exercise. So when we start to automate those repetitive tasks, we also start to reduce the margin for error, which is critically important, right? So quick and easy, you've got access to relevant information. That is also critically important because it's that information that is going to inform the very decisions that you are going to take, which potentially could lead you down the road to litigation if indeed you've taken the wrong decision, right? Workflows, simplification thereof. Employee relations is not a topic that line managers want to talk to you about as HR practitioners, right? Often it's seen as an impediment. It's seen as the not so nice part of HR. Why do we have to talk about it? Do we really have to issue a warning? Is it such a big deal? Oh, but last year we weren't doing this. Why are you introducing this type of policy now? Etc., right? But your failure to do so is what's going to land you in hot water, right? And the key thing around this is the actionable insights that you can potentially gain from AI. This is where the key value lies, right? You can start to get a little bit more strategic. The world is changing, and it's changing at a pace that I think we haven't seen before. And employee relations is no different. If you look 3 years back, 5 years back, did we have all of the data privacy legislation that we see now? No, right? We've got countries that are piloting what they're calling the right to disconnect, right? Which is around, because of borderless work, because of remote work, right? And hybrid structures, etc. You've got Akona that's sitting at home and that's doing a full-time job, but never switches off from work. So literally, because I don't step into an office and I don't have a standard, I come in at 8 o'clock, I knock off at 5 o'clock, what inevitably starts to happen is that I'm answering emails at 9 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. People are starting to get sick. And so there are some countries that have started to say, but hang on, employer, you need to do better. And they're starting to pilot legislation around the actual right to disconnect, which is around saying, if you as an employer set a particular time in terms of saying, these are the working hours, you've got 30 minutes, an hour after that, and thereafter you should not be sending emails to your people, right? Did we see that as a possibility 5 years ago? Probably not. 10 years ago? Probably not. So things are evolving. Policies are important. The law is changing. The space we operate in is changing, right? Your policies are critically important. How you draft your contracts is critically important. It touches on your recruitment. It touches on your retention. It touches on how you manage performance, right? It touches on the end-to-end employment relationship, which is of critical importance. So this is how all of these elements can start to impact your organizational culture. Hence, I say, not paying attention to the elements that sit in the employee relations space, whilst I do understand it's really not a topic that everybody enjoys talking about, it can start to unravel some of your key successes that you've actually had in other areas. So, that being said, I really want to focus on looking at specifics, because I think if we talk about kind of the overarching frameworks and strategies, etc., we're certainly going to run out of time. So, how many times have you been caught by surprise as an HR practitioner when an employee or a group of employees finally speak up and say, actually, I work in the supply chain team and my manager has been an absolute horror for the past 5 years. It happens more often than we would like for it to happen, right? How many cases are you sitting within your organization where your high performers, the individuals that are often celebrated for hitting targets, getting brilliant results, right? How many of them are actually toxic high performers? Do you know? You might not, right? Because the signals aren't there, which is where AI can assist you in terms of starting to mine some of the data that you have to start to push out those pointers to say, but hang on, there might be a bit of an issue here, because if Akona is a high performer and has been in the organization for 5 years, and in her team of 10, on an annual basis, she's losing 7 people, it might be easy to not think about that because the team is producing the results. But when you start to analyze whether indeed that rate of turnover is higher than the averages in the business, you need to start interrogating why. Right? You've got surveys that you do. What do you do with all of that feedback? Are you interrogating what is being said and actually what is not being said? Because this element of toxic high performers is the element that erodes your organizational culture very, very quickly. Because all of a sudden, employees turn around and they say, well, okay, this individual continues to be celebrated by the organization. And then employees will say, but it's impossible that the organization doesn't know that this manager actually consistently mistreats their people. That is what employees have in terms of an expectation of us as HR practitioners. Generally speaking, employees assume that we know everything. Meanwhile, we don't actually know that there's a problem, right? And what does that do? It erodes the trust. And when that trust has been eroded, who is going to come and speak up and say, I'm actually encountering a challenge because of 1, 2, 3? It's never going to happen. You're going to launch grievance processes and relaunch them and say, here's a speak up campaign. We will do something about it if we know about it, but your people won't speak up. Right? So when you start to use those AI-driven analytics, this is what is going to give you the insight in terms of the number of what is actually happening with your people in your organization. Right? You can start to look at trends in employee behavior. As I say, turnover is pretty much one of the elements that can be an indicator, right? In organizations where there's a lot of warnings that are being issued for disciplinary transgressions, are you assessing how often that's happening? Are there teams where there's spikes? Is it something that is following Akona around from her move from supply chain to her move to marketing to her move to HR, that everywhere she goes, there's a bit of a spike in terms of the number of warnings that are issued? Do you know whether that is even the case? Do you know whether those disciplinary transgressions are all the same thing? Is it all late coming and absenteeism? Is it negligence? Right? Is it possible that every time I issue a warning, it's for negligence? Is it because I've got too high expectations of my team? Is it not? Is it because the work that we're doing is highly charged and it's got difficult timelines, tight timelines, etc.? If you don't understand that detail, there's a lot that's going to fall through the cracks. So you need to analyze the patterns, but you can't analyze the patterns because you don't have the data. You can't use predictive analytics either because you're not using AI. Therefore, your data that you probably do have is not telling you very much. One of the things that we are also not getting right as organizations is legislation comes out, there's an amendment to this labor code. The first thing we do is we go and we amend the policy, right? 100%. Sometimes it's mandatory and we have to, sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're saying, well, we want to stay ahead of the curve, right? Do you have any idea at any given point in time, if you have any policies within your organization which affect certain groups, employee groups, disproportionately? Does it affect women more than men? Does it affect people of color more? Does it affect persons with disabilities more? Does it affect them positively? Does it affect them adversely? What is it that needs to happen? What is it that needs to change? So all of these examples that I'm making are the things that speak to the absolute fiber in terms of your organizational culture. This is why I say, if you're going to look at employee relations in a kind of siloed outlook, you're going to come unstuck because you're going to see impacts in areas that you didn't expect, right? Training and development, I think that's a standard one. We had a long presentation about that a little bit earlier, but of course you can leverage that as well, right? And when you start to use your predictive analytics, maybe you can even start to catch the problem early on before you have employees that are voting with their feet and are deciding to resign because they simply cannot take the work environment anymore, right? So, policy's point of view. When there's a policy update that needs to be made, are you still attaching the document and kind of doing a round robin? It's going to start at Akona, then it's going to go to so-and-so, then it's going to go to so-and-so, then it's going to go to so-and-so, and then eventually it's going to go to the VP who's going to sign it off. How much time is that taking you? Right? Does that start to erode the effectiveness of what you're trying to achieve? Are you still asking yourselves questions around version control? Which version of the policy came out first? When did it come out? Who drafted it? Oh, we think it was Akona, but she left the business 3 months ago. These are some of the challenges that AI can alleviate, right? Even from the creation and the updating of those policies. It's entirely possible if you're leveraging the right AI tool. The information is out there, right? It's around how you use that information and start to integrate that into your business activities. Version control, easy. You can build that in. That's not going to be a train smash at all, right? And then the secondary element is around how you communicate those policies to your employees. I can draft a beautiful policy if I'm the only one that knows about it. It's not the employee or the company's policy, it's my policy. And if I communicate in a manner that does not resonate with the employees to the extent that they understand it's a 7-page document, but this is the nub of what this document is saying, you're still going to get transgressions. And then we're going to say the favorite thing that we like to say in HR when the employee says, but I didn't know that's what you meant. We say, but you signed for it. Which is likely true. Doesn't mean that they understood. Right? So those are some of the things that we need to start looking at, right? Thinking about starting to minimize the queries that come across our desks. That element in terms of freeing ourselves up to be able to perform the core strategic functions that add value in our organizations and that start to give us a bit of a competitive advantage. That doesn't sit in us analyzing spreadsheets. It doesn't sit in us answering questions around the code of conduct, right? And I'm going to speak about that in the next slide a little bit more. That's not where the value is sitting. So when you're leveraging AI, right, from an automation point of view, when you start to walk that value chain, you start at the bulk or the wholesale automation, and eventually you're getting to the point where you are now in the nub of it insofar as being able to have a personalized experience, right? Legal developments that change for organizations that are not in one country. Are you still Googling them? Say, who said what? Which court was it? Is it mandatory? Is it not mandatory? Because my manager wants an update. Right? And so we go on Google. Oh, what was the case? No, nobody knows, but it was about retrenchment, or it was about poor performance, and then we hope that Google's going to give us the right answer. Are you doing risk assessments that are still sitting in Excel spreadsheets? On somebody's computer somewhere, hoping that somebody's going to integrate them at some point in time, but then at some point, you're not even doing the trends analysis to say, well, between 2015 and 2020, we did a 5-year analysis. This was our risk assessment. Why are the same risks coming up 10 years later? You're never going to know because you're treating it as each element as completely separate from the other, right? So when we talk about labor compliance and managing risks, this is where you can really start to get the true value in terms of AI, right? Because the information is sitting there. If you want to do a comparison between the law in South Africa versus India, you can leverage AI for that. Unless you do want to go and read all of the legal books and all of the textbooks and all of the case law, you can certainly leverage AI for that, right? Critically important. And the sooner you do it, the better. Because in this day and age, the longer you take to ensure that you are compliant because of something that's happening in the regulatory space, your employees are finding out about it on social media, by the way. And then they sit and they wait to see if you're going to comply. And as far as employees are concerned, you know about it, you don't care about it, and you've done nothing about it. Again, speaks to the culture of your organization and how it can be eroded by us not leveraging what's at our fingertips, right? So when you start to automate the elements in terms of monitoring and compliance, right? You can leverage AI tools to say, for the tool to give you an update in terms of this has changed in Mauritius, and so you know. Right? Then you can't miss it, because the truth of the matter is we are incredibly busy in our roles. We can't run away from that fact. There is no kind of coming into work and having a 4-hour lull and just thinking about what should I do, what shouldn't I do. It is frenetic, it is hectic, expectations are high, so there are certain things that you need to do to ensure that you alleviate the risks and prevent violations in this particular space, right? So as I said, AI can track the changes in legislation across your jurisdictions. Critically important, right? And in terms of risk assessments, you can start to get risk assessments in real time, right? This element has changed. Now you're exposed. This element has changed. You don't have a policy on this, et cetera, right? Those are the key things that you need to be able to take the right decisions. HR is synonymous with getting those emails and those Teams messages, etc., that says, what's my leave balance? Can I take 3 days of sick leave without a doctor's note? Where do I find the forms for a grievance? Right? And you're saying to yourself, it's all on the internal portal. Why doesn't the person go there and just look? All of the information is there. But at the end of the day, they've sent you the email and they're expecting a response from you. Simple as that. You don't respond. You don't respond becomes an issue. So, how many times have those obvious questions resulted in frustrations from employees? Because HR doesn't care. HR is unresponsive, right? So why would we not then leverage AI? Chatbots, virtual assistants, because an employee gets immediate assistance at any given point in time. This doesn't need to have a 9 to 5 time period, because if I want to, at 10 p.m., understand whether the code of conduct says anything about harassment, I can simply log on, and the chatbot is going to tell me exactly where to find it in the code of conduct. And this works incredibly well. Because one of the other things that's important, because again, it's around mining your data, at the point at which you can start to understand what are the key trends in terms of what employees are searching for, it's going to tell you something again around what is happening in your organization, right? And so grievances can be a first point of contact as well. Some individuals are not comfortable coming to HR, having a meeting with you, explaining what it is that has happened. So when you start to leverage AI, virtual assistants, chatbots, you are able to get that right. What does it do? It minimizes the queries that come into your inbox, right? And there is, and because the algorithm, etc., the chatbot, virtual assistant is properly trained, policies are up to date, etc., then the chances are 99% probability that the employee is going to get the right answer. Ease of access is important. We've got borderless work, we've got global work, we've got hybrid work, we've got remote work, we've got work across geographies. If I want to understand something at 11 p.m., for goodness sake, then I should be able to have access to it, right? Do less with more. Often the mantra in HR, right? Less resources, less time. But operational excellence is still a key priority. This is often something that we hear in our organizations. But notwithstanding this, employee relations issues are becoming more complex. They're becoming multi-layered, right? Insofar as how we start to address them. And of course, you've got the trial by media, by social media, where you leave something before you've even gotten a chance to start to resolve it. It's all over social media, and then the populace is playing judge and jury. Very difficult for you to recover from that position. And employees are starting to demand workplaces that are fair, workplaces that are equitable, workplaces that are engaging, right? Because the war for talent is alive and well. If I don't like what it is that you're doing in the organization and I don't feel like I have to stay in the organization, I'm going to leave, right? Carries implications, right? So it's around optimization of processes. That's how you start to achieve your operational excellence, and that's how you start to generate your strategic insights. Last slide. Just in terms of pitfalls, and a lot of these you would have heard, but there's one in particular that I really want to hit home here, which is the human oversight, right? AI can do a lot of things, right? When you're dealing with employee relations matters and you're dealing with people, you do need the human touch. You absolutely do, because often there is context that can be missed. There is context that you, as an HR practitioner, will be able to get from said employee that perhaps the AI algorithm or the AI tool will not be able to pick up on. You cannot just introduce the tool and just leave it and just do whatever it is insofar as outcomes, insofar as recommendations, suggestions that the tool is saying. As an example, I think it was in the States, but it was before the new president came in. I think it was the Employment Equity Commission, where there was an organization that used an AI tool insofar as recruiting, right? And what happened at the end of the day is the numbers then came out skewed in terms of gender, in terms of race, etc. And so the organization said, no, it's not us, right? We've been using an AI tool for that. And the commission said, hang on just a second, no, that's not how this is going to work. There needs to be an element of human oversight because you will be held accountable. in the same manner that if you don't protect that data, you will be held accountable. It's not your bot and your virtual assistant that's going to be sitting in court. It's going to be you or the organization that's sitting in court, right? Simple as that. So, in summary, you can increase your understanding, you can build your capabilities, right? Do not let all of the other facets become areas of key focus and you leave out the employee relations piece, because it's critically important to how you're going to achieve sustainability in your organization, right? It's more than a tool, right? When you start to look at AI and what it has the capability to achieve, when you think about your employee engagement, when you think about sustained high performance, when you think about leveraging your workforce as a competitive advantage, because the marketplace is competitive, I don't see that you will be able to achieve it without, at some point in time, to some degree, start to leverage AI. Right. Thank you very much.